Dare great things for Christ. Christ calls us to dare great things. In the marketplace, as well as in the mission field, there has never been a time like the present for the spirit of the Catholic entrepreneur. Now is the time for men and women of great courage and great vision to engage our church and our culture. Now is the time to dare great things. And here is your host as we dare great things, Father Nathan Cromley, the president and founder of the St. John Institute.
In his book, The 48 Laws of Power, author Robert Greene says that people who desire power should play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. This is very different from what Jesus Christ did. And yet Jesus Christ arguably created the most powerful movement in human history. Any Christian who's exercising power today needs to understand the dynamics of people's belief and imitate their master, Jesus Christ, who leads in truth. So we're continuing on with our series here, looking at the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene and comparing this thought to the gospel. And I love doing this because on the one hand, I always like acknowledging the truth that is present in things even that I disagree with or that the gospel disagrees with. You know, it's like nothing is powerfully attractive that's completely wrong. Okay, like even when you think about things theologically, even the devil himself, so to speak, uses something that is good and then just warps it. So there's always something good present. Otherwise, human beings wouldn't try to go for it. For example, if you're like, I'm going to take revenge on my enemy, right? Well, that's an evil thing. You're not supposed to take revenge on your enemies. You're right? It's not as bad to do that. But then why do we want to do it? It's because we see it as somehow good. Okay, so whenever you're dealing with a criticism of some sort of thought or that's out there, it's always important to acknowledge what is right about that thinking. And then you can better see where the thought actually diverges. And that divergence, that's where the opening for God comes in. Right? Because God's going to be both right in all things that he's thinking and the best of all options. So what we've got here going on with Greene is that in his 48 laws, he's got the 27th law that he puts out. And he says that if you want to have power and success in this world, play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. Okay? So on the one hand, you're like, I can't even believe he's saying this. Like, this is like, wow, right? And playing on people's need to believe just sounds so wrong. And of course, it is. Because what you're doing there is you're leveraging something that's very sacred in people and very innocent and very impressionable. And it's like leverage that, step into that, use that need to believe, acquire it for yourself so that then people will do things for you that they otherwise would never do. Okay, so again, this sounds kind of evil, and I gotta say, like, yes, I think it is. Okay, there's just no other way to put it. Like, this is not the way that Christians are supposed to lead. And yet, if you think about it, this is the way that a lot of people today choose to lead. And you can almost ask why. Why is it so tempting for people, you know, in our modern kind of culture to set themselves up as being more than they are, so as to gain a loyalty from their people that they otherwise they couldn't earn by just their sole goodness. So they set themselves up. Why is that? Right? Here's what Greene writes in his little summary of Law 27. He says, people have an overwhelming desire to believe in something. Become the focal point of such desire by offering them a cause, a new faith to follow. Keep your words vague but full of promise. Emphasize enthusiasm over rationality and clear thinking. Give your new disciples rituals to perform. Ask them to make sacrifices on your behalf. In the absence of organized religion and grand causes, your new belief system will bring you untold power. Okay, that's what he says. Now, it's like, well, I mean, like, will it really bring you untold power? You know, I'm not quite sure. In any case, because like, what kind of power is this over people? This is really something, I find this very nefarious. This is not something I'm endorsing at all. Matter of fact, I'm kind of criticizing it, but you got to acknowledge that there's something in there that's attractive. And that is that people want to believe in a leader. They want to be following somebody. The deeper that the leader's value goes, the more in total the followers' commitment to them. Okay, so if a leader puts themselves up as, look, my job is just is your boss, and I tell you what to do, well, your loyalty to the leader is going to be as deep as the transaction that you have. You'll pay me such and such money. I like the way that you give me clarity around what I'm supposed to perform, and then that's it. Right? And here he's touching on something. He's saying, well, if you really want power over people, then don't just stop at what is transactional in the relationship, but rather set yourselves up at a deeper value. Now, this is actually a very studied kind of thing, the psychology of leadership. I'm thinking, for example, of transformational leadership theory, which is out there and which is, in many ways quite laudable of a thing. But this, it plays on this type of thing. It says a transformational leader is there to bring out the best of their followers and allow their follower to actually develop into something where their leadership is total in them. It comes out of every part of their being. They're not just transactionally performing a function, they're putting themselves into their work. And we say, well, gosh, that's exactly what we need, especially if we're forming future leaders for our companies. Then you got to do that, right? So, and transformational leadership says, in order to make this happen, there's a thing needed called idealized influence. And that's where the leader shows that they embody much more than transactional prowess, but actually that they embody kind of like the mission of what they're trying to accomplish in the company. And that triggers and touches something deep inside of the followers and triggers from them a response that's more personal, that's deeper, that's more total. Okay. So there's something that's now, if in fact that leader, that transformational leader is doing that for what is good and showing them the deeper transcendent good that's present, an objective good that they're trying to work for, well, then there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, you're helping the person to become a better person by working for you. And that fits very well with the Christian cause. But nevertheless, if you take that away and you say, we're not going to do it on what's objectively good, we're just going to instead tap into your need to believe, the fact that you want to bring more of yourself to work than just your transactional skills, that you actually want to bring your heart, your passion. You want to see a mission in your job. Well, I'm going to give you one, but I'm going to divest what I'm giving you from any reference to anything objectively good. Well, now you've got a manipulator, okay? And an evil action. From the Christian point of view, this is something that's bereft of moral goodness. You can't say that I'm just going to tap into your belief in order for you to give me more control or influence over your life than I would have if you just, were in this using your rationality. This is why he says deliberately emphasize enthusiasm over rationality and clear thinking. Because by enthusiasm, if I can get your enthusiasm, then I can control you more completely. This is, again, something's very wrong about this, right? But it's based on something that's right. Okay, and what's right is that people want to have a bigger purpose. And a leader has the opportunity to embody that bigger purpose. And when we do, we create organizations where the work performance is more successful, more thriving. The more people believe in why the company exists and the bigger purpose for that company, the more that they're going to be dedicated to it. And it's not just companies, it's also families. It's also organizations that we can lead. To be a leader, in other words, who brings the otherworldly into the business or into the organization, into their leadership, was a leader that allows other people to really dedicate greater efforts to the cause. Okay, so that's not a bad thing. In fact, it can be a very good thing. But Robert Greene here, he's not suggesting anything objective to anchor this in the goodness. Instead, he just speaks of it in terms of manipulation, and that's what's wrong with it. But let's take a look at what Jesus does with this. how does Jesus approach this same reality in the people who were listening to him?
Would you like to hear more from Father Nathan? Join the St. John Leadership Network and receive a 2-minute glance at the gospel every Sunday morning right to your phone. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
So we're talking here about Robert Greene's 27th law in his book, The 48 Laws of Power. And in this law in particular, Greene emphasizes the ability that a leader has to create a cult-like following, right? So in other words, to get a belief system in place amongst their believers that where they give you more power than you could just exert over them by any kind of transactional relationship. You touch into a deeper part of their being by bringing about transcendence. Okay, so on one hand, you could look at this and kind of wonder, my goodness, isn't this what religious leaders do? And the answer is no. Religious leaders should not anyway do this. A religious leader, in other words, isn't here in order to manipulate you to a following to themselves. Okay, a religious leader is supposed to be leading you to God. And that's where a boss or an organizational leader who has faith can mirror the correct way of doing this in their place at work. Okay, and to the degree that's correct for them. Meaning, here's what I mean. Think about what a religious leader does, right? Because they're leading people, but they're leading people towards God. And they're leading people often in the name of God. Well, number one, the very first thing a religious leader is supposed to do is recognize the distance between themselves and the reality that they're embodying. Okay, so in other words, it's not about me. Think about John the Baptist, for example, who said, I am unworthy to bow down and undo the strap of the sandal of the Messiah. Even though everybody's coming to me to find the Messiah, he must increase and I must decrease. St. Paul says the same thing. Says, I am just a clay vessel that holds a treasure of great value. But of myself, I am nothing. I am less than nothing compared to Christ, the one whom I love. So even though they're proclaiming the presence of God and their actions bring that presence of God effectively to the people that they're with, they are clear to point out that they are not the one to whom the followers' homage belongs. Instead, they're only an instrument, only a vessel. That's something you don't see. The people who do this type of behavior that Greene describes in Law 27, they don't do that. Instead, they take it for themselves, meaning I am the answer to your problems, or I am the one who is anointed, or whatever. And this is not the way Christ has set us up. But at the same time, he wants us to try our best to influence people at a deeper level. Right? To allow them to connect even with God through our leadership. Right? So the first thing I have to do is distance myself and not make it about me. It's about God and not about me. But then the second thing that I have to do is I have to do exactly the opposite of what Greene suggests. Instead of emphasizing enthusiasm over rationality and clear thinking, the Christian leader emphasizes rationality and clear thinking over enthusiasm. In other words, we're not here, to get people's allegiance. That's not the point of a leader. The goal of the leader is, and from the Christian perspective, is to empower those whom they lead to do what they would do even better. So a leader is very much the servant who enables and empowers the followers who are influenced by their leadership to do great things, even greater things than the leader themselves can do. Okay, and that's just the opposite from what Greene is saying here. And look at how wonderfully Christ embodies that. Here he is with his apostles during the Last Supper. And you know what he says to them? He says, you will do greater things than I. It's it's one of those incredible lines from scriptures. You will do greater things. There's a lot of commentary around that. What does that mean, right? That it will do greater things. Well, I mean, I'm going to leave that, for those who are commenting on it. But the point that is the example here of Christ, who at the Last Supper takes off his outer garment, ties a towel around his waist, and then washes the feet of his disciples. You see, this is so different Whereas Green is saying the leader should become the focal point of the desire of their people to believe something. What a manipulative statement that is. What a terrible thing. I mean, you might get power, but you'll have lost your soul. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people can be tempted by this. They can say, yes, we want to make ourselves the object. If you think about social media today, isn't that exactly what we do? We take our personality, we take our style, we put it out there in social media, and then we get everybody to pay attention to us so that then they'll do what we suggest that they do. And then all you have to do is align yourself with various sponsors. The sponsors are benefiting by your endorsement. You're benefiting by the sponsor's money, and the people are going from you into whatever you're sponsoring. And this is how the market works. You set yourself up, and the more that you can get your people to have a dedication to you, the more that you'll be successful in terms of the money from sponsorships. Well, it might be fine. It might be fine, everybody, but this is not the goal of our life. A Christian is supposed to be deeper than this. And it's important that we Christian leaders go deeper than this. Because otherwise, we're going to end up with a society where everybody is simply using each other. And this might be the perspective of many people that are skeptical or that have a negative vision of humanity, but this is not the Christian vision for humanity. The Christian vision for humanity, we don't take advantage of other people and manipulate them. We serve their innate greatness. And yes, that might mean that they end up giving us a lot of trust, and that they might end up, really, esteeming the relationship they have with us as their leader. But because we distance ourselves from the end goal by saying, I am not the point, and we emphasize rationality and the truth and their ability to know the truth, we become, in a sense, a coach, a servant, a teacher, someone who's there not to dominate the other, but to set them free. This is a very important role that Christian leaders can have, and it enables our society to transcend the inner fighting that comes from pure monetary materialistic transactions, wherein each person tries to dominate the affections or the allegiances of their potential customers. And we transform that by saying, guys, it's not about potential customers. It's about products and services that enhance the lives of those who purchase them or use them. And our role as business leaders is to make sure that we do that. We have to be far away from this type of manipulation that Green is suggesting and not fall into it. Because in the end, it's something that really shortchanges ourselves and the people. It might be effective at gaining power in society, but the goal of a Christian is not to gain power in society. It's to do good. It's to help people. And the way that we do that, remember those two rules. Number one, you demonstrate the difference. I am not the focal point of your affections, okay? and not at all. And then number two, you emphasize rationality and the truth and the ability of the person to know the truth. Then you have something even greater than someone who offers you a cult-like following, as Green speaks about in Law 27. You do something much greater than that. You gain people who are better at what you do than you are, and who can enhance the work of the company by giving the very best of who they are to your common mission. And that's something that's going to lead all involved to be winners.
Would you like to start your Thursday mornings with a scriptural leadership lesson? Join the St. John Leadership Network, where Father Nathan hosts a 30-minute call at 6:30 a.m. in all 4 U.S. time zones. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
So we're discussing, Robert Greene's 27th law, where he says, play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following if you want power in this world. And remember what Greene is doing. He's following in the footsteps of Machiavelli. And Machiavelli basically says, we might wish the world was other than it is, but my job and what I'm trying to do is show you how to succeed in the world as it is. And most of us can nod our heads and we say, you know what, that's probably right. But guys, that's not the role of a Christian. A Christian is not to take the world as it is and to succeed in the world as it is. A Christian is to meet the world as it is and bring it into redemption, to bring it to a better state, to not just say, hey, these things are wrong and twisted, I'm going to manipulate them so that to my own advantage. That's not, I mean, like, that might be what people want to do, and, good on everybody, I suppose. But at the same time, man, that's not what I'm here to do. That's not what the Christian leader is supposed to do. Christ did not give you power and influence in society so that you could make the success of society for your own. He gave you power and influence so that you could bring this world to him, that you could bring the light of heaven into this earth. Right? And that means that we have to be doing our leadership differently. If we're about making this about our own glory and getting people to give us adulation, well, then we're not leading the world. We're in it. Okay? You're not leading the world at all. The world is leading you. And you're just smart enough to find the practical way to bring that to your advantage. But Christ reminds us that it's not to your advantage to lose your soul. You could gain the whole world, he says. But if you lose your soul, what profit is there? He reminds us that there's something in us much greater than this type of Law 27 here by Green could give to us. There's love, truth, virtue, wisdom. These things that transcend anything that other people could give you if you manipulate them, that you can only acquire when your life is aligned with what is objectively good, true, holy, excellent. And if we're going to lead this world in the name of Christ, well, we have to do what Christ did, keeping ourselves focused on that spiritually transcendent truth. And with our focus there, well, then we apply ourselves to the leadership and the influence that we can have in the world, but we do it like servants. I'm here, in other words, in order to pass on to you something deeper that I've found. Now, we might not be able to do that in our companies or in our leadership in a way that's outside and external about faith, because it's just not appropriate, perhaps in our different circumstances, to do that, although sometimes it is. I mean, if you own your own company, I don't know why you wouldn't put a crucifix in your office. I mean, honestly, well, what are you hiding it for? But then again, a lot of you don't own your own companies. Some of you just work for other people, and you say, I really can't bring this to bear. But what you can do is you can bring the goodness of love to bear. Listen, you might say, I don't have anything to say about y'all's faith. Your faith is yours, okay? But I do have something to say about your love. Okay, because you might not have faith, but what we can do is create as loving, that is, as excellent, as challenging, as virtuous, as wise, as spiritual a setting as we possibly can. An easy way to do that is you stop cussing at work. I mean, it's a bad sign of a leadership if you need to express yourself by using, words that are not dignified. Well, then you yourself are betraying a lack of decorum. And this will generate a lack of respect instead of a growth in respect from those who follow you. As an example, I'm not going to cuss. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to degrade other people. I'm going to remain positive, joyful. In other words, I live embodying the truth that I see and know in faith. And then through my actions and through my example, people will be curious to know where it comes from. And that's when then, of course, I can tell them if it's appropriate. And to the degree, I'm trying to say that your leadership, in other words, sometimes people stop and they say, I can't talk about Jesus. I'm not a preacher. I'm not there to, thump a Bible. And I say, that's fine. You don't have to be. But don't for as much say that you can't lead, bringing a different kind of influence to this world. And what is that? It's to insist that the people who work for you can give the best of who they are, defending that right and enhancing that for them so that they can give the best of who they are and they can develop themselves at the service of a good or a service that is truly good and truly a service. Right? That's the foundation of it. We can get a lot more complicated if we want, everybody, but that's what it comes down to. And Robert Greene's Law 27 here, I think it's the antithesis of that. If you end up making yourself the focal point, keeping your words vague, he says, right? Emphasizing enthusiasm, giving disciples the chance to make sacrifices on your behalf. I mean, what is that? I mean, that's just horrible to speak like that. And yet that's exactly what he's saying to do. And so many people will fall into it, wanting to become successful by courting their customers through this type of manipulation. But this is not the Christian way. Instead, we follow Christ. What did he do? Christ came to this earth to die for sinners. Yes, he was the focal point of a following, but what he tells us he's doing is going to the Father and pointing everybody who comes to him to the person of the Father. Now, it's, of course, more theologically nuanced because Christ is God, so he is the way, the truth, and the life, and he asks for that kind of homage and recognition. And yet, at the same time, he gives an example where he tells his disciples not to do that. Remember when he says, "Call no man on earth Father, and none of you should be called Rabbi. Instead, all of you are brothers. You have one Father." So he's saying, yes, for me, it's true. I can make myself this focal point because I am God. But for you, I'm telling you not to do that. The kings of this world lord their authority, love their authority, and lord it over those who are around them. But it must not be so with you, he says. On the contrary, if I've given you power and authority, it's so that you serve with it. And serving means the people that are with you are more free, more dignified, more competent, more enabled by your action than they were before. And what an opportunity this is. I mean, it's the opportunity. It's almost like what Green is offering here is not nearly as desirable as what Christ offers. Christ offers the chance to love people with the Father's love, to build them up, to set them free. And Green does just the opposite. So aren't we glad that we follow Christ? And may we do so better every day.
Dare great things for Christ.
Share your feedback with Father Nathan. Send us an email at communications@stjohninstitute.org. That's communications@stjohninstitute.org. And visit www.stjohninstitute.org and sign up for our newsletter to receive updates from Father Nathan.